Back in the early 2000s, I discovered the website apple.com/trailers. This is back in the era when YouTube had less videos than albino black sheep, so it was probably the best way to get regular updates on the newest trailers. And I had no social life at the time, so I probably checked it twice a day minimum. Between that and ComingSoon.net, I knew about pretty much everything on the movie horizon. I didn't know who my congressman was, but I knew every movie coming out every single summer. One day in 2004, couldn't tell you when, a trailer dropped for an action-adventure movie called Sahara, and I had the same thought as all true movie lovers of that era.
Nope. I got the check. Sit down, I'll get the check.
Ooh, Steve Zahn. The trailer looked great. Gunfights, stunts, treasure hunting, funny dialogue.
Bet you 100 there's a toolkit in there.
Don't want to rain on your crazy parade, buddy, but I don't think we can fix this thing.
Penelope Cruz, Foo Fighters songs. 16-year-old me was sold on the idea of this movie. It was released in April, but in March, my dad came home from work with an interesting development. I don't remember the full story, but one of his coworkers had advanced screenings to that movie, but for some reason he couldn't go. My dad also couldn't go for working for the FAA reasons. I mean, people from the FAA were allowed to go see advanced screenings of movies. He just had like a late shift and he couldn't go. But he knew that I was interested in that movie, and so he said that he could take the tickets. This resulted in me and my mom going to the only advanced screening of our lives. And let me tell you, it kind of worked out for the studio a little bit, I think. We weren't reviewers or anything, but we both loved the movie so much that we spent the next month telling everyone that would listen that they needed to see that movie when it was released. And this is going to continue because if you haven't seen it, do. It is one of the most fun movies you ever missed out on. It is exciting, funny, fun, thrilling, escapist popcorn awesomeness from beginning to end. And it's a great date night movie. If you have a date with someone, this is one of those perfect let's enjoy a movie together movies. You will both laugh, you'll both jump, and while there is romance, it isn't the sort that makes you feel awkward with someone that you're trying to get to know. I hope you're all on the same page right now. Watch Sahara. You won't regret it. It's great. I hadn't watched it for a few years, and this past Father's Day, I decided to give it a rewatch while I had a glass of rum. It was a good night.
I've been in the right place, but it must have been a wrong time. My head is in a bad place, but I'm having such a good time.
I had a blast again, and it was at least the 15th time that I had seen this movie. But because I can't turn my brain off, while I was watching it, I was struck by the idea that you know what Hollywood doesn't make anymore? Fun movies. That sounds extreme, and yes, I will admit that it is hyperbole. The Fast and the Furious movies are probably some of the last holdouts that I would put inside this category, and I would also say that the most recent Jumanji sequels are also pretty fun. And yeah, you could probably put pretty much anything with Jason Statham in it inside of this category as well. But the thing is, that is a short list, especially when you consider the volume of fun movies that used to come out just every single year. There used to be a baseline level of entertainment that we expected for movies, so that there was about one a month at least that you could see and just not regret it. It may not have been super memorable, and you might not run out and immediately tell everyone that you saw that they have to see this movie, but it didn't feel like a waste of time. It was fun. I think there are a few factors in why this feels like a dying breed right now, and I don't think that any of them were done intentionally. I haven't seen these points listed anywhere else on any of the other videos that I've seen, so here we go. Here's what I think. One of the reasons is there are no basic villains anymore. There's kind of an evolution in storytelling in regards to advice on writing villains that I think has kind of led us to ruin. That evolution was understand, empathize, relate, and pity. It all started with a solid bit of writing advice in the 80s and 90s, and that was that the audience should understand the villain. And what was meant by that is that what the villain wants and does should make sense to help with the suspension of disbelief in the story itself. Freddy Krueger is killing the kids of Elm Street because their parents killed him. Simple revenge story. That makes sense. It's still evil, but we understand why he's doing it. Jason Voorhees' mom kills camp counselors when they get intimate because her son drowned while camp counselors were getting intimate. We understand what the villain is doing and why. And that's one of the reasons why Take Over the World is such a good plan for a villain for the heroes to thwart, because we can see that someone might want to become the most powerful person in the world, especially if they have no morals. Now, on the other hand, when what they're doing doesn't really make sense, we can't accept that they're even doing it, and that keeps us from getting into the story. I saw a blog a year or so ago where someone said that the evil billionaire capitalist trope is kind of played out because we have a little bit of trouble believing it now. I have $20 billion, but I plan to do this highly illegal, unethical, violent, evil thing, and then I'll have $20.5 billion. Yeah, I'm not buying it. But that good piece of advice evolved from understand to empathize, and that's the point that it started to go off the rails a little bit. Not only did we need to just get the villain's plan, but we had to be given a backstory that made the audience think, I see how someone could go through that and want to blow up a hospital. This was really done to try and make realistic villains, and it did accomplish that, but it was the end of fun villains, and then the fun was beaten to a bloody pulp when it transitioned to relatable villains. Once we reached that point, not only did we have to empathize, but the evil was toned way down so we could see ourselves making the decisions that the villain did. Society didn't leave him with many options. He had to stab that guy. And then after that came pity. We have reached a point where writers think that the only way to have a great villain is for us to not be sure who to root for at all. Even though they haven't created a great villain in like 15, maybe 20 years. Stephen Hay, I've not heard his name said out loud, so I'm not entirely sure how to pronounce it, has a fantastic short about this. It's funny, but it makes a great point, and I will definitely link it below. We make the villain so relatable that we're not even sure that the hero is right. Now, that may be complex, but it's not fun. And when every villain is that way, movies themselves aren't fun. So, Sahara has two villains. One is a warlord. Evil. He wants to maintain power, and he oppresses his people. Bad guy. We don't need to know anything else, and we're not told anything else. The other villain is just a little bit more complicated. He's accidentally responsible for a toxin poisoning people. And then once he finds out, rather than fix it, his solution is to try and bury the evidence so he doesn't get in trouble. Those decisions make sense, but he's still a scummy person. Basic forms of villainy like this are kind of dead. Of course, there's a deeper reason for this. We are forehead deep in postmodernism, which teaches that there's no such thing as objective truth, which means there is no good and evil, and how can there be a definite good guy or a bad guy when there's no such thing as evil? I'm just going to let that hang out in the atmosphere for a little bit. Reason number two I think that movies aren't fun is messages in film. Now, I'm not talking about just things like The Critical Drinkers.
The Message.
I mean the idea that movies have to have some deeper meaning now. And a lot of times we don't like that message. I never liked Bambi as a kid, and it had nothing to do with Bambi's mom. I remember thinking, this movie is trying to teach me something and just writing it off as a loss. When I was 6. And as much as I love them, I kind of blame Pixar a little bit. Pixar came into the space that was children's movies and made incredible films that mixed emotion and comedy and theming, gorgeous animation, and deeper meanings into an incredible and enjoyable package. The problem is that Hollywood actually learned the right lesson here, but they just way over-applied it. They said people want their movies to be deeper. I mean, sure, that is usually true, but some stories shouldn't be. They should just be fun, and modern filmmakers seem unaware of that fact. Can it possibly, if you squint, be about something deeper? Great. Lean into that, even if the movie was better before you did. And even worse, can you not think of anything deeper it can be about? That's fine. Just have a monologue or a scene where we directly tell the audience something that they should learn. They'll love it. Don't take this the wrong way. There's nothing wrong with deeper movies. Most of the greatest movies of all time have made you think about serious quandaries and maybe even affected how you thought about those things. But that's not right for every story, and going too hard can turn the audience off. And avoiding stories that can't be deeper also helps you miss out on fun ones. Also, integrating deeper meaning to stories is really difficult, and most writers aren't up to that task. And that's not just a knock on modern writers. I am not shy about doing that. But even if you go back through older movies, the majority didn't really include any deeper message. The problem is that modern writers either aren't self-aware enough to know that they are not good enough to do that, or they're being forced to do it. There are a lot of movies not about anything deeper than the story that we love, like The Mummy or Jaws. There's no deep metaphor or lesson or theme there, but we don't want one because the movie is a blast as is. Sahara isn't about anything necessarily, except that sometimes there are bad people and good people need to stop them. That's all, and it's awesome. Reason number 3, too much CGI and editing. Yes, I know that many people have listed that complaint, but I'm going to give a different perspective on it. I hated the Beauty and the Beast remake. I described it as the most joyless, pointless movie I'd seen at that point. It felt like no one wanted to make that movie. Not the director, the writer, the choreographer, the actors. It felt like the cameramen didn't want to be involved in that movie. And I feel like that joylessness is becoming a little bit normal in movies, especially with actors. And I think CGI and editing techniques are mainly why. Actors don't like CGI. They like to have something to work with. The most important creation in recent film history was Gollum in Lord of the Rings, but he was still played by a real person on a real set for Elijah Wood and Sean Astin to act with. Actors love working with other actors on real sets, and when they're not doing that, you can usually tell that they're not having fun, and we can feel that as an audience, and it makes the movie feel not fun. And this goes beyond CGI, and I'm about to break some glass for you, and you will not be able to unsee this. Watch older movies. There's a filming technique called mise en scène, where you try and set up a shot for a scene so the whole thing can be filmed in one shot without moving the camera. Now, as film nerds, we all love long tracking shots, like in Extraction or Children of Men or Extraction 2, but long shots actually used to be the norm. The difference was that the camera didn't really move very much. If you ever noticed, and you probably haven't if it wasn't pointed out to you, that in Raiders of the Lost Ark, Marcus comes to tell Indiana that he needs to go after the Ark of the Covenant, and that whole scene is one shot until Indy tosses his gun into the suitcase. And it's because the camera only moves 3 times. So why do I think that that is a big deal to bring up? Watch modern movies while thinking about that. They rarely do that anymore. Instead, it's one actor in a close-up, cutting to one actor in a close-up, cutting to another actor in a close-up. Watch any movie made in the last 10 years and count how many times actors are in the same shot and they both say a line before there's a cut. It is bizarrely rare. I'm slowly going through The Bear right now, and in season 1, there are a staggering number of just really tight close-ups. Actors love working with other actors. It's one of the reasons why they act. But when it is close-up after close-up, there might not even be another actor on the set. So it's one person working alone, and the close-up is so tight that that actor can barely even move without messing up the shot. And when that's the case, the actors aren't having fun, and you can feel that as an audience member. I unapologetically love the terrible movie The Spirit. It amuses me, and if you go into it not wanting to take it seriously, it is hilariously entertaining. And one of the things that makes it so enjoyable is that you can tell that Samuel L. Jackson is having an absolute blast making that movie.
Toilets are always funny.
You could almost hear him say, "I am so glad I took this job," after every single take. In Sahara, every actor looks like they're having the time of their lives. You finish that movie and ask yourself, why isn't Steve Zahn best friends with Matthew McConaughey and Woody Harrelson?
What is the secret to this thing?
Just wrap it around your nugget.
What part? Here? This?
Yeah.
Well, how come yours stays on?
Maybe you got a small head.
I don't think so. Somebody would have told me.
And that's really my broader point here. Actors don't seem to be enjoying themselves anymore. And I think it's because they're not really being allowed to act anymore. And if they're not having fun, then the audience won't either. My reason number 4 is movies take themselves way too seriously. If something isn't a big budget studio film, it's a small indie film, and those are not allowed to be fun. They have to make you think, or confuse you, or weird you out, or gross you out, or make no sense whatsoever. The campy, ridiculous horror movie is a thing of the long past. Those all have to be dark and bloody and strange and extremely stylistic and kind of make you feel like you need a shower after watching the trailer because the air in those films just looks dirty. Comedies are completely extinct. Action movies have to be about serious topics now. James Bond used to give us movies about billionaires that build space station arcs so they can destroy and then repopulate the Earth. Now it's about people developing and threatening to use germ-sized murder robots, which feels just a little bit too plausible. Sahara's plot is not possible. It's ridiculous, and the movie knows it, and it leans into the ridiculousness hardcore, and that is fun. Reason number 5, movies don't take themselves seriously enough. You didn't see that one coming, did you? See, there are movies that try to be fun, and they're ruined by trying to shoehorn a message into themselves, too much CGI and impersonal editing, but they also don't take themselves seriously. The writers have to let you know that this is ridiculous, so they don't treat things seriously. No one reacts to anything realistically, and jokes are inserted because it's been too long since there was a laugh, whether the scene calls for it or it makes sense for a character to make the joke or not. What this does is undermine us caring about the story at all, and if we don't care, we don't have fun. Everyone at some point in their lives has played a game with someone who doesn't take it seriously and doesn't care if they win or lose, and they're not fun to play with. And when that person is the person who invented the game in the first place, it just is so much worse, I would imagine, because I've never played with the inventor of Monopoly or anything. Sahara is ridiculous and unrealistic, but everyone in the movie treats it as believable. The characters act like they're in trouble without winking at us, so we believe that they're in trouble, and we care if they get away.
We're gonna drive north about 3 hours till we hit the flatlands. From there, it should be a relatively easy drive to the Algerian border.
Sorry.
Ava. Ava! We'll get through, huh?
Dramatic music plays over the over-the-top action sequences, and nothing strange is ever acknowledged. This is the world that exists here, and you will respect that. Like I said, not all movies have to be like this. There's a place for serious or ironic movies, but those shouldn't be the only options. Movies can be art, and they are art, but they're primarily entertainment, and I feel like we've kind of forgotten that. I can't think of a movie this year where people just said, watch it, it's a lot of fun. And in contrast, 2005 had Sahara, but it also had Hitch, The Pacifier, The Interpreter, Kicking and Screaming, Unleashed, Madagascar, Sister of the Traveling Pants, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, Herbie Fully Loaded, Bewitched, Wedding Crashers, The Island, Sky High, Stealth, The Dukes of Hazzard, The Brothers Grimm, Transporter 2, The Man, Just Like Heaven, Corpse Bride, Flight Plan, Greatest Game Ever Played, Doom, Chicken Little, Zathura, The Ice Harvest, Yours, Mine, and Ours, The Family Stone, Fun with Dick and Jane, and The Producers. None of those are truly great movies. Some are barely okay. But you know what? They're all fun, and you don't regret seeing them. They were an entertaining way to spend 2 hours, and then you go on with your life. And I kind of miss that. Hollywood is in a free fall right now, and people pitch all kinds of reasons, all directed at making great movies again. But I contend that we need more middle-of-the-road fun movies first. Then we can talk about making great ones. Sure, the super high-grossing blockbusters are nice, and they were always there after 1975. But all of those little fun movies made money too. And I feel like a studio could make a fortune right now if it just started having fun again. You'll see me next time if you subscribe.